All right. Good afternoon. 12:01. We can call it an afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Steven van der Heijden. In South Africa, we say van der Heijden. I'm in the Netherlands, part of the Dutch office. I'm the VP of Product at OfferZen, and I will be hosting the webinar today, moderating the panel discussion. Today, we're going to be talking about from job post to offer. So right from the beginning all the way to the end. And we're going to be focusing on finding the right fit. We are a permanent employment job marketplace for the most part. The majority of the placements that we do is full-time, and we give a 3-month guarantee that that's going to work out. And if you have a cancellation within that 3 month, we give you your money back. Obviously not the salary you paid the developer, but at least the fees. We do this because we believe in making the right fit, and the right fit is crucially important for building a tech team. So it's very important and dear to us, this topic. So hopefully we have some cool stuff to share with you, and we'd love to see your interactions in the questions and the polls. So while we're talking about that, we have a questions tab and we have a chat tab. You can ask questions in either of them, and we will pick those up, and I will try and make sure that they are answered by anybody who's on the panel here today or myself. Remember that you can see us, we cannot see you. And if you drop off the video, you can just come back by that same link that you had at the beginning. So that's pretty easy. And yes, as Stefan is doing, I would love for all of you to say hello in the chat just to test it out, make sure it's working. Let us know where you're dialing in from, maybe what company you're from if you're interested in doing that, what you do there. That could also be fun. Also gives us an idea of where to kind of peg the conversation. You know, if it's everybody here is, senior engineering managers versus like recruiters, we can kind of just make sure that we're talking to the right people. So that would be useful for us, and also just a bit of fun. Okay, cool. So a few words about OfferZen. If you don't know us already, if you don't have a t-shirt, then we're a developer talent marketplace. Basically, we help companies find awesome developers and hire them, and we help developers find awesome companies and hire them. So we're pretty much focused on professional software developers and making great connections between companies and developers. And the idea is that you get direct access to developers. So traditionally, if you've used OfferZen before to hire, you'll know that you can log in and you see a long list of developers. You can filter them through, or they're automatically matched to your position, and you get direct access to them. You can send an interview request directly to them, and you're not talking through anyone, and you're talking directly to them. And they are ready to go, basically ready to move. And our talent advisors, who you'll meet in a second, they make sure that the software developers are not kind of hanging around. So if you imagine you're on LinkedIn, you're outreaching, doing all that kind of stuff, people can mess you around a bit. It's pretty frustrating when you get to late stages and the person's like, I'm actually happy in my job. So that can be quite irritating. That leads to a faster time to hire. We also make sure that we do initial rounds of curation just to make sure that developers on OfferZen are have like some level of experience for the most part and are actual good software developers. And then we have an account manager on the company side, and a candidate gets a talent advisor, and both of these are designed to kind of make it as frictionless as possible. Obviously, we have the product team, and we're going to have all of those representatives from each of those three here today. And we're going to talk about how we try and do this to optimize for fit. So that's what we do, and that's been the traditional thing. The other two exciting things that we've been working on from the product side, while I'm here, I may as well do the product plug from our team. We launched applications a while back, so you can publish a position and candidates can apply to you. We've seen some really cool stories of companies making hires through that. And we are about to launch a much more in-depth and pretty exciting recommendations kind of feature and tab within the product. You heard it here first. And that's promising to be really good. We've just upgraded the underlying matching engine there, so pretty excited about that. So keep your eyes tuned for that. All right, so we have a strong focus on community at OfferZen. You've probably got a t-shirt, or you've come to an event, or hugged the big panda bear. And this today is no exception. Today, we are just trying to create a surface area for you to learn stuff. We've got some people that have joined us, taking their time out of their day to help share some things that they've learned, and hopefully that's useful. We've also got some other community events that we do. There's a bunch of them that's just come up on the screen. We do webinars. We also do a meetup. It's just myself and Phil Jabay, who's one of the founders, with a bunch of CTOs, engineering managers, people that are interested. It's like 10 o'clock on a Wednesday morning, just very chilled Zoom call, kind kind of very, very relaxed type meetup. And then we also have the webinars. And you can come there and learn about things from actual CTOs and not listening to me drone on. So speaking of me droning on, today we're going to be talking about lessons in finding the right fit. And I'm going to ask the other panel members to come to the stage so that you can hear from a different voice. And when I do, I am going to ask them to introduce themselves so that you know a little bit about who they are and what you can ask them for. So if you can, panel members, and I'll tell you who to start. You can just tell us a little bit of, like, just say your name, what you do at OfferZen, what your lens is that you bring to the table. Maybe Lisa, we can start with you.
Cool. I'm Lisa, and I'm a talent advisor at OfferZen, which basically just means I work with candidates really closely. I help to coach candidates through their job search, make sure that they have really high intent so that companies don't get ghosted. And basically what I bring to the table on OfferZen is that I can give really good insights into what candidates are thinking, what they find to be great job searching experiences, and how to attract those top developers and talent in the best way possible.
Thanks, Liz. Nixie?
Hello, I'm Nicola, and I'm a senior account manager at OfferZen. I think very simply put, OfferZen account managers are actually here to empower and to assist our clients while using the platform. I often like to say I'm like a personal trainer. So I'm always coaching you and helping you, but just taking on what Lisa said, when she deals with the talent advisors, so account managers are here to assist you, like with training. We could help you with candidate recommendations, help you set up your job descriptions, even when there's a little bit of maybe some communication issues with candidates and you need feedback and even insights as well from candidates. So we're here to just make this use of the platform much easier and much more exciting.
Cool, thank you. And Mr. Git, is that the Git Fetch hoodie, Henry?
Yeah, it is. It is. My name is Henri. I'm product manager in the marketplace team, which means that I'm responsible to figure out what features are we building next. What are we doing to help companies and candidates find one another, reach out, and make placements at the end of the day. So all of this is my world. Understanding the product and what we need to build and how it works is all in my domain. And so hopefully I've got some useful things to share today.
Cool. Excited to hear from each of you. And yeah, so the idea is that we can get some different lenses from the candidate side, the company side, and then from how we think about it as the facilitators of the transaction, and Henry is representing basically the product. So that's the plan. So some context about why we're talking about this topic. As I mentioned, ROI is really important for us, but it's also really important for both, fit is really important for us, but it's also very important for the company to maximize like your ROI, right? You spend an enormous amount of time hiring and doing all of this work and getting this person on board and onboarding and setting them up and all that kind of stuff. And just like at a rands and cents level, it is expensive to hire the wrong person. At a cultural level, it's also extremely expensive to hire the wrong person. On the candidate side, exactly the same thing. They invest a lot of time, a lot of emotional effort. They change it's a big life event. Changing jobs is one of the biggest life events you can do. You don't want to get that wrong. So fit is incredibly important. It's not all about the money. I think you said Nick's has probably had many, many conversations between companies and candidates that money isn't everything. And I think more senior you go, the more people have learned how important fit is, growth opportunities, what it is that they'll actually do, who they'll work with, those kinds of things. So that's kind of the context. And the other last piece of context is that the market has changed quite a lot where it feels like it might be easier to find developers, but there are other new important things that make it actually harder. If you're a hiring manager, you'll know your inbox is pretty full and pretty intense, or if you're a candidate, you've probably sent more CVs than you would have before, which means your intentionality reduces, which means the fit generally is harder to find, weirdly enough, because you're just kind of spraying and praying and just trying a whole bunch of things. So as as the kind of market gets noisier, fit can even be harder to find than before. So that all said, we're going to jump into 3 themes. The first one is proactive versus reactive hiring. Second one is creating the right engagement throughout that whole funnel to optimize for fit. So not to sell necessarily, whether you're the candidate or the company, but to be honest, to create transparency and to make sure that there's fit, and then communicating feedback during that process to make sure that it is going to end in good fit. So those are the themes. Jumping into the first one, let's talk about like proactive and reactive. So Henri, as the person who's managing the 2 kinds of products within OfferZen, what is the difference between proactive and reactive hiring?
Yeah, sure. So let me just start a little bit back. So traditionally, OfferZen has been a single-sided marketplace, meaning that we've only really facilitated proactive hiring. The only way that you would be able to use OfferZen as a company member is that you would proactively search and find candidates that you're looking for, and you reach out to them, right? So it's targeted from the one side. You're in control. You can be very specific as to what you're looking for, and you can be very targeted. So you can place very tight criteria on what you're looking for, and you can be very targeted. That's proactive. That's when you're searching and you're reaching out. You're essentially in control. The other side is reactive, and reactive is where, is like Stephen mentioned, the thing that we kind of released earlier this year, where the other side of the marketplace, where you're open to applications coming in, you're open to getting an inbox full of candidates that might fit. So reactive, therefore, could be anything from an application to your job post. It could be a recommendation from someone. It could be a referral from somebody in your company. It could be an AI generated recommendation. It could be an account manager generated recommendation. Nicola will be able to tell you about how many how many recommendations she does, and so on. So essentially, reactive is you get the things in and you just need to say yes or no. It's kind of faster, it's simpler. And then proactive is you actually being targeted, going out and searching for exactly what you're looking for, either on OfferZen, on LinkedIn, wherever you go, but you're in control and you're targeting exactly what you're looking for.
Thanks. Yeah, I asked a question in the chat. We'd be keen to hear your opinions, folks. But next, as someone who represents a bunch of companies and helped a lot of companies hire, what do you see in the market? Is everybody doing both? Are people preferring one over the other? Which one suits which use case?
I would rather kind of change my answer to like what would be the most successful way.
Okay.
And what I've seen is more proactive. Reactive definitely works if you're struggling with a very rare skill. So that's where we would come in and do the recommendations. But I think the idea of OfferZen was that you're here to cherry pick your candidates, right? So as you said, as a hiring manager, you don't want to be bombarded with CVs that don't actually fit your role. So I have an example of a CTO from a very large corporate that actually took the proactive approach, and he reached out to candidates that were specific to what he was looking for, which is an engineering lead. And if I had to go and recommend those candidates to him, I probably wouldn't have gotten it as accurate because he knows what he's looking for. And when he did this, and he went through the process, he actually ended up hiring about 8 engineering leads. So he needed about 10. He got 8 out of OfferZen. And that is the result of it. Now, when it comes to recommendations, we can definitely help. And it all depends on how much information we also get. So it's a bit of both, but I would say if you know exactly what you're looking for, rather go in and define that job spec, whether you're using apply or you're going in and you're just cherry picking them, that probably would be the best way.
Yeah, I suppose there's a question in that is like, so do you start as tight and go wider generally? Do you recommend that? You start with the outbound or like really searching through OfferZen with a very tight filter set and kind of move out?
Oh, yes. Yeah, so definitely play around with it, and then deal with those. But I think I've seen like I have another example of a company that's looking for people that need to relocate to Zambia, and it's not that easy. So that's where the inbound applications and OzApply would then work, because we can specifically state like we are specifically looking for people, and that's going to be easier for them because then they don't have to reach out to candidates and be like, oh, actually this position is, you need to, yeah.
I think
So,
we've seen a lot of our customers, especially when they're looking for something that's hot, like people don't write on their profile. So one of our
yes.
customers is looking for a technical writer, for instance, like not many people put that there, but they can do the job. So inbound really does help when it comes to those kinds of meta, non-traditional matching things. Henri, what would be interesting, maybe you can retell the story of when we launched Apply, from like where we were at the beginning, kind of who can apply to a job and where we are now, and like what our paradigm was, because it's kind of related to this.
Yeah, that's a great point. When we launched this thing called Apply, we're using the word apply. Let me just explain. So Apply is our internal name for the means that candidates can now apply to positions on OfferZen. So it's the dual-sidedness of our marketplace. So when we initially launched this in March this year, we initially gave candidates the means to apply to, we gave them the means to apply to anything, but we only limited them to 20 best matching positions. And we hope that would drive them to apply to things that match really well, thereby meaning that we get good quality applications and many of them will be accepted. Over time, we realized that we needed to expand that list. We had a lot more positions, and maybe number 22 in the list was actually the one that was the best opportunity. So we expanded the list, gave candidates access to more. And then we realized actually now we're getting too many applications that were not exactly what you're looking for, not exactly what company is looking for, and not a great match. And so then what we did is we started limiting it back again, specifically based on your requirements. So the one big change that we made is we kind of set a limit on seniority. So that means that if you're a very junior candidate, the positions that you have access to, that you can apply to, you cannot apply to the position where somebody's looking for 15 years of experience if you're a grad, if you're just starting out, because that was a lot of the applications that we were getting were from graduates who are really looking for pretty much any opportunity out there, and they would be applying to anything. So we had to bring it back. We had to limit it a bit more, and it seems to be increasing the acceptance rate of our applications quite a bit.
Nice. Thank you. I'm pretty excited about that, especially since, and I asked the questions, like anyone not publishing jobs at all, because I've heard a lot of people, it's like, if you're getting a bit flooded, sometimes you're positioned to, you don't actually want to put your job out there. You just want to do outbound. I would be interested to hear if anybody's doing that. Okay, so let's just wrap up this first little theme. What advice would you give to company members, kind of open to anyone on the panel, that are thinking about this? Next, you made some comments. Are there any other words of advice on balancing this reactive and proactive?
I think, if you're going to reach out to candidates and be proactive, I think your message needs to be, you need to communicate and be intentional in what you're doing. So you're opening up a conversation, you're reaching out to the candidate. So provide information that's obviously going to attract the candidate through. So, like perhaps putting down your LinkedIn profile, maybe giving your email address and your cell phone number, also giving as much information as possible so that you can actually get that candidate's buy into the role and having chatting to you. I think that's one step of it in the proactive reach, because when you actually type out your message, so everyone knows if you're using OfferZen, we have that pre-written template, and I always advise clients that you can actually use it, but you want to bring some uniqueness. You want to tell them a little bit about you. So I've had clients that have actually introduced themselves really well, mentioning who they are and what they're looking for. And then they're like, here's my LinkedIn profile. Here's a job spec. Let me know what you think. So you're actually making this very intentional. Like, I've seen your profile. I've seen you as a unique person, and I'm reaching out to you. And that in turn, and probably Lisa can speak to how the candidate reacts when they actually see a very intentional message come through. And that's a proactive part. From the reactive, I mean, that will boil down to you actually putting on your job description. And I think we'll probably cover that maybe through this conversation, is like that job description also needs to have the right kind of information. When you're putting it on apply, and it would be nice if they could also just outline the steps, like once you apply, this is what's going to happen, dot. Yeah.
So, okay, cool. That's a perfect segue into the next thing you wanted to respond there.
Yeah, just to speak more on that is what I've experienced with candidates is when they get an interview request or a message from a company and they can see that the company or the hiring managers actually really looked at their profile and mentioned something about the work they've done or a company they've worked at or a specific
Yeah.
skill that they have. It makes that candidate feel like they've been handpicked and not just part of a mass bomb email like you sometimes get. And yeah, it immediately sparks a lot more interest. And just from a talent advisor point of view, I always encourage my candidates, if a job spec doesn't have all the details, ask the questions, accept that interview request anyway, ask the questions, clarify if that job is the right fit for you, because sometimes a company might have another role that's open that might be a better fit and they didn't know you're the person for that role. So we do take like a really holistic approach to try make those good matches happen.
Got you. Okay, so Nixie, you mentioned some of the interesting components of like what's important for that initial outreach. Could you list those out for us? Like, what are the most important bits? Like personalization. You mentioned hiring process. Like, what would your little like pro tips list look like?
So I would say you want to outline, I think the work policy, whether it's remote or hybrid, is very important. Like we know that there's been a shift in the market right now, so that is very important to outline. The growth opportunities, even if you're putting it on the job spec itself, like you have to mention, like, will there be growth in this role, especially if you're going into like a senior person, like someone that's kind of borderlining or just become a senior. They want to understand, like, am I going to grow in this role? Then you also want to outline, is this a contract position or a permanent position? I mean, by default we do permanent, but there are sometimes that we get that. And I think, we have this very wordy job spec, but if you could just tell the candidate in a few lines, what will you actually be doing or what exciting projects there are? And then, of course, open up that communication channel. Like, don't just send the message and then it's done. And then, the candidate has to then wait a few weeks to hear back. Give them the opportunity to pop you an email if they're a bit worried. Some people get very excited when they get reached out by maybe a CTO or, a hiring manager. So it's literally just the right information, the right stuff about the job, everything that the candidate would need. Put yourself in their shoes and like understand exactly what would you like to know if you were going to be going into the job market.
Yeah, I suppose how much of it that is like who I'm actually talking to? Like, do you need to like introduce yourself and be like, listen, because you mentioned people get excited when there's a CTO. Like, how important is that? But
That is important. I think that also gives the candidate an understanding of how this is actually going to fall. In some cases, we do have talent teams that reach out. So it's nice for them to also say, look, I'm the talent recruiter or I'm HR at XYZ company, and I'd like to chat to you about this role. This is a position that we have. That's really nice. When it comes to maybe the founders of the company or the CTOs, I think that just makes so much more of a bigger impact because it just tells a candidate, like, this person took time out of their day to come and find me. So I think create your brand, but also don't be shy to share your LinkedIn profile as well. I've had like that corporate client that I spoke about earlier actually did list his LinkedIn just to show this is who I am. I'm a real person and you can read up all about me.
Yeah, I suppose when you go back to that context of fit, it's like people work with people, right? You don't work at a company. A company is just a collection of people.
It's a human element.
Yeah, 100%. Henri, just to clarify the interview request that a candidate receives, what information is there? Like, from what information is there on OfferZen, and what bits do people need to add themselves?
Yeah, sure. So I just want to take it back a second to like the position. The concept of a position is what we kind of start with on OfferZen, which is essentially the role you're trying to fill, right? So a position is, this is what I'm looking for. This is the role I'm trying to fill. And you specify a remote policy, you specify your budget, you specify pretty much everything that you know about what you're looking for. So it's essentially the job spec. And so when you reach out with an interview request to a candidate, when you're proactively sourcing, you will attach, or it's very easy to attach your position. And when you attach your position, all of that information, well, not all, not the budget, for example, but most of that information is shown to the candidate. The candidate knows upfront what the job is. We've heard so often from candidates, they get frustrated when they get reached out to, but they don't know what the job spec is. Like, sure, I want to work for company X, but I need to know what the job is. Is the job that I'm going to be doing something that I'm actually interested in? That type of information. So we have that as a feature where you can actively link the position when you send the interview request. And you also reach out on offers, and you reach out with a salary, right? So that's part of our value prop to candidates, is that you get a salary up front. So the candidates specify their preferred salary on their profile, and you can see that. And so when you reach out, you can populate a preferred salary that you kind of get the conversation to start. And you can, even if you don't use a position, even if you don't link a position, you can still specify the remote policy and the location, because as Nixie mentioned, it's super, super important to get that up front.
Yeah. So I would imagine, at least I suppose the question then for you is, given that a lot of this like nuts and bolts stuff is taken care of, in what does a candidate really want to see in that initial outreach? Like, should people be focusing on introducing themselves and why they're specifically interested in the candidate, or like what's the trick there?
Yeah, so I do get a lot of
Oh, I think we lost Lisa. Did we?
Can you hear me? I'm back.
You're back,
Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, they are sometimes concerned that it might be a robot that's reaching out to them. Like I said, that mass email outreach sort of vibe. So they like to see a really concise sort of job spec up front. What technologies am I going to be working with? Is it a hybrid position? Is it remote? And how long is this interview process going to take? Am I going to have to go through 10 interviews only to then, find out it's not a good match? So the more information you put in the job spec to begin with, in that outreach, the easier it is for the candidate to make a decision on how much time they invest in the process.
Yeah, that is also what Nick's was saying. So I've only been VP product for a couple of months, so I don't know the answer to this question. How much do we actually surface that, what the hiring process is? Do we do that like in a structured fashion, or is that just up to the people to do an interview request? And like even off platform, how do people do that? Do you just put it in the message, or is there should you host a thing on your careers page, or like how have you seen this being done well?
I think it varies, but the most important way, because you're going to be communicating with the candidate on the platform initially, is just to outline that hiring process. Of course, when you reach out to the candidate, they get a link and they get to see your profile page. And we always urge companies to put that information on the summary of their profile page to say this is what your hiring is going to look like. But it's also nice just to have it. I have a client that actually sends a Calendly link. Like one of his first things is like, if you want to chat, if you're keen, like, here's my Calendly link. And once you select that, I actually got this information because I stole some time from his Calendly link to get a meeting with him.
Yeah.
So
I remember that.
You remember that? So I told him, like, I'm sorry, I saw that you were sending a Calendly link, so I'm actually just going to steal some time. And I actually got to see what our candidates are getting. And it was really nice to see, because he actually has this little part where he says, hey, here's a little bit about our company. Here's a really cool video. Go and have a look. A little bit about me. Questions that I hate people asking me, and how people mispronounce my name, and then what you can look forward to in the interview. And he's basically listed, like, you're going to do this, you're going to meet the team, etc., etc. Another client would then say, look, great, here's the job spec. I mean, yes, you do attach the job spec. It does get pulled through when you send the message, but they just kind of just send it again just to make sure the candidate gets it. And is like, here's the steps to the dance. You're going to do this. Our HR is going to reach out to you. Then you're going to have a technical interview. And I think if you can tell the candidate that, it actually sets the expectations really well, because Lisa can probably speak to this. We often get candidates, especially if clients are not letting them know this upfront, They're like, what's the next step? What do we do now? When do I hear back? But if that is outlined at the very beginning, the candidate feels a bit more relaxed and calm, because everyone knows if you're really excited about a company, you want to know, like, can I join now? But you have to follow the process.
Mm. So how does that actually like make it better for companies to hire? Like the candidate feels a bit better, but how does it increase the time to or decrease the time to hire or increase like your probability of actually hiring that perfect fit candidate if you do that?
So one of the most important things when trying to hire the best talent in the business is keeping those candidates interested and warm. It's like if you've just met someone and you're taking them out on a date and then they don't hear back from you for 2 weeks. They don't know if you're interested, but you've just gone on a business trip, right? Like they don't know that. You've got to let them know the process. You've got to let them know, okay, after the first interview, it'll be about a week and then we'll get back to you with a tech assessment. That tech assessment is going to be XYZ. This is how you can prep for it. And then it'll probably take about 2 weeks for us to give you that feedback because we do send it to a third party to, assess. After that, you're going to meet with our CTO at our offices. You can dress casually. It's that vibe, and it feels so much more personal, and it sparks that interest rather than them feeling like they're going through a like cattle going through a chute. And that's how you're going to attract the best talent, because if someone is really good, you're not going to be the only person interviewing them. So you got to make sure you stand out. You've got to give them that like really great experience and that warm fuzzy feeling.
Yeah, I suppose you guys get to see that, right? You get to see the candidates sitting there with 5 different companies and those conversations running in parallel, and basically the most responsive one is going to win, right? But then there's another element of it there's this balance that a company needs to run of trying to find the right fit, to test the person and interview them, to evaluate them, and not do it too much that they over-evaluate the person. The person is now, it's too much work. It's like a 10-hour thing, or it's heavy technical interviews and all that kind of stuff. And you've pushed so hard in optimizing for the fit that you've forgotten to care about the human's time and actually entice the person and make them feel like they're not going to join a bureaucratic machine, right? So how does that balance work? What have you seen? Where do you see that people getting that wrong and right in that process?
You can go, Lisa.
Okay.
I'd like to hear both.
So from what I've seen, I think it's really important for companies to tailor their assessment processes according to the role that they're hiring for. If you're hiring a junior or looking to hire a junior, of course you're going to want to give them quite an intense technical assessment to see where they're at, what level they're working at, and what they can cope with, because their CV or their profile is not going to be able to tell you that. When you have someone with 15 years of experience, they've been at their current company for 5+ years, they're an engineering lead, they're working with the latest technologies, you can pretty much guarantee they're good at what they do. You don't want to be sending them a technical assessment that you're sending to juniors that's asking questions that you would have learnt in varsity. These guys feel a little bit put off by that. Like, why are you making me do this? Don't you trust my skill level? I've been doing this a long time. I'm tired. Like they would prefer something that's rather tailored to their level of experience. So it's not a one size fits all. You can't take a one size fits all approach to hiring in this market. It's not going to have the best outcome.
Yeah. Next, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, look, from my side, we know that assessments are important, and the assessments don't just test the technical ability, you're also testing for quite a few other things, like how committed is this person to my process, or how do they deal with deadlines and projects, right? So when companies actually put this together, they're thinking of a lot of things that's going to tell you if this person's going to be a right fit. So that's great. But I think what Lisa's also saying is, if you do have someone with X amount, like a senior person, like if someone had to tell me, I want you to do a test on recruitment, and I'll be like, did you check my profile? I've got over 10 years of recruitment experience.
Yeah.
But these are developers, these are technical people, and you have to test them in some way. So I think when it comes to those senior people, you probably want to do like a whiteboard assessment, or maybe like a pairing session, and kind of sit down with them and just test them on something. Other ways, like I always tell my clients, like, if you're setting someone up for an assessment, understand that there are probably 5 other companies that are giving them assessments, right? So they're going to prioritize the opportunity that they're most excited about, number one. But these people also have jobs. They're also working during the day. They've committed to their current employer. They may have kids that they have to go home to. And God help me, someone has to ask me to dedicate 2 hours or 3 hours to an assessment after hours. It's never going to happen. I'm just going to walk away, because I don't have that capacity after hours. I'm juggling. I'm probably sleeping like at 9 o'clock and I'm exhausted. So I think you'd have to bear all of that in mind. One of my other clients, probably about a year ago, had a very creative idea to motivate candidates to complete the assessment. So if the candidate had done the assessment and actually passed it, like you made it to the next step, but you've actually passed that assessment, it wasn't an easy one, but they actually gave them a 500 Rand Takealot voucher to say thank you. Some companies might actually give someone like I know OfferZen does this. When we did our sim day, like before you even knew that you had a job, there was a little thank you gift. Thank you so much for the time that you've invested. Here's swag from OfferZen. So that just makes that lovely, warm, fuzzy feeling that Lisa spoke about, that gets the candidate excited and more committed. So assessments are important and vital, but you also have to stand out, and you also have to bear in mind the timing. Giving someone 3-4 hours of an assessment,
Yeah.
you kind of have to balance it. You have to balance it.
And be cognizant, as you said, treat them like people. Think of their lives, understand their environment, and just have respect for the work that needs to be done on both sides, and balance that. And I really like your tailored approach. Yes, I think that's a good one. And even at OfferZen, we have like standard hiring dynamics, and I often want to shortcut them, and then I don't really have a good reason to do it, or like a good principled reason. But it's a good framework to say, okay, if it's more senior and you need to trust more and you need to sell a bit more, and you need to create this impression that's going to be tough and very process driven when they land on the other side. Henri, do you have anything to add to this before we move on to the next topic?
Not really. OfferZen doesn't at the moment provide tech assessments as a function. We have mentioned it in the past, and we know that some companies are looking for it, so it's on our list of things. But at the moment, we don't provide tech assessments as a feature. So yeah, maybe if you guys are looking for that, and post it in the chat, then we can get some feedback.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it would be nice to know which is the best assessment,
Yeah.
because everyone has their fair take on which they think is the best. So I think that's probably the bigger hurdle for us, like which one would ever be the best one.
Yeah. I was gonna mention exactly that. From a strategy perspective, at least our operating thesis is that once you've made the match, once you've been connected with the person, everybody kind of goes dark on their own processes. People use Google Sheets, people have a heavy process, they have a light process, they use this tech assessment, they don't use tech assessments, they give vouchers, they don't give vouchers. And we've spoken to many companies and tried to figure out whether there's an opportunity to create a way to save the developer time, in other words, to get them to run one test and then publish the results to everybody else. But we made the strategic decision that each company finds fit in their own way, and trying to do that for the company is not necessarily the thing that we do best, right? So if we take down what do we do best at OfferZen, we find talent that nobody else can find in the nooks and crannies and in the meetups and in the garages, and we can get their profiles built, and we have an awesome platform to surface their talent. But beyond that, assessing their talent is that's each company. That's what they're getting. That's really that little important cell and that little important assessment is what you need to do as a hiring manager or as a talent person. Okay, so moving forward, so you're having an interview, you have to balance now the level of assessment with how much you need to create a good experience for the candidate, because you're competing essentially, and for the most part you're still competing. So you might think, okay, the market's changed a little bit. I promise you, you're still competing. The candidates still have multiple offers, and you still need to think about this. Talking about offer stage, when that starts to happen, because it can also fall flat there, right? I think a lot of people think, okay, cool, I'm done. I'm going to send the candidate an offer. But what they don't think about again is the candidates may got multiple offers, or they missed something along the way. Like, what happens at offer stage? Where does it like kind of really come through, and where does it fall apart? Lise, maybe start with you.
So I would say some of the hurdles and blockers that we experience the most at the offer stage is your pre-offer checks that companies like to do. So your criminal checks, qualification checks, and then of course references. Those take time. It's sometimes really hard to get a reference on the phone and get that reference done. And a candidate has very little control over that. So they end up sitting on the other end waiting for this offer that they're really excited about to come through. And if those processes are super delayed, then it can, their interest starts to wane, and they could then also have another company swoop in whose process is a little bit quicker. Maybe their checks aren't as stringent. And, you could have gone through a really good interview process with a candidate just to lose them right at the end because those processes take a bit too much time. So what I like to sort of chat to our account managers about is saying to a company, okay, if you're interested in this candidate now, even though you have one more interview to go, maybe start those checks, maybe start getting their references, maybe get them to go do their fingerprints now. Like, get the ball rolling with these things if you really like this candidate. So that you can get that offer in before the end of the month. Lots of us have calendar month notice periods. We want to resign by the end of the month so that we don't have to stay a whole nother month and have that awkward 6-week notice period happening. So yeah, lots of things to consider in the offer stages to make that run nice and smoothly. Keep the candidate warm. Let them know, hey, thanks so much for going for your fingerprints. It's going to take a week to come back, but like, we've got you. We're not ghosting you. You're good. We love you. And just keep those fuzzies fuzzy for that period.
Yeah, cool. Next.
Yeah, I think everything that Lisa said I think it's really like the communication is quite important, right? So you've kind of done everything that you need to do now. You've assessed this person, you've interviewed them, probably done the culture fit interview, and now it's like, we're ready to go. But there's competition, and you want to stand out. So the more you communicate, even if it's just picking up a call, or if you're a HR or a talent advisor at your company, get the hiring manager to actually give that person a call and be like, hey, I'm this is what we're doing. We're quite excited for you to be joining the team. We're just getting the paperwork together. And that's the softer part of it. The other part that I think is very important is it's a very simple sales rule, which is the ABC rule, always be closing. You also want to have the salary chat probably after you've done initial screening. You kind of want to understand, like, this is what you're earning. You want to break it down. You want to make the candidate feel comfortable in telling you everything. I think often at times, Lisa would probably agree with this, is when it comes to offers and we start finding out more information and the candidate feels a bit like awkward to like actually mention, like, hey, I might have study leave, or oh, I actually got this stuff coming up, or I might be getting an increase. I think if you can have that channel of communication open where the candidate feels that they can tell you everything, your chances of actually signing up that person, because I think one of the biggest things is when we get to the actual offer, seeing the money, some candidates will be like, but it's not what I wanted, but it's not going to cover this. So you have to cover that, always be closing that, always be checking up, like with the notice period. Also find out, give them the opportunity to tell you if there's other companies that they're interviewing with. They don't have to tell you who it is, but you can kind of gauge whether or not they're more interested. So that's how you're going to win, because it does become competitive. You want to be the one that they choose, but you also want them to choose and make the right choice so that they don't leave. So the more you engage, the more this is going to be a success.
Yeah. I mean, it just seems like a recurring theme from both of you. Just keep communicating, tell everybody everything. And how much do you experience that? I mean, at least maybe to you, because you're a talent advisor, right? How much do candidates tell you stuff that they don't tell the company? And is that a thing? Like, and why do you think that dynamic might exist?
So I'm really lucky in that working with my candidates, I do build like a really good relationship with them. And sometimes they will say to me, "Oh, Lisa, um, I I've thought about it, and the salary I originally asked for isn't going to cut it because XYZ, but now I'm scared to say something." And I always say to them, rather speak up now so that you don't get all the way to the end of the interview process and then they can't match that salary. You're investing a lot of time in this process. If it's not going to work out at the very end, it's better to know that now, and be upfront. Companies are hiring you because they want you to be a reliable person that is able to speak about or have those difficult conversations. I think openness and communication is just like a really good show of character as well. And also just showing that you have great communication skills. Even if you're the person doing the hiring, having those great communication skills sets the tone for how it's going to be to work for that company.
Yeah, I think so. If I had to kind of sum up some of our conversations so far, that OfferZen in the platform really will take care of a lot of the base information, the salary initially and what the position's about and all that kind of stuff. And your job when connecting with candidates is to actually create a human connection and communicate. Be explicit and open about all of those things from the get-go. This is who I am. Look at my LinkedIn, and do those things and actually try and remember that you're selling as well as interviewing, and you want to build that connection. If you're really going to go for fit, right? If you're just filling seats and you don't really care about the people, then maybe this isn't the right advice. But if you want to find the right fit, then you need to have a human-to-human connection, and that involves creating that relationship and that engagement, so that the person feels like they can tell you and not tell Lisa. To make sure that they feel like, okay, I know a guy there or a girl or whatever. And I was once in the recruitment process. I actually sent the person flowers afterwards after saying no to the recruitment process because she did such a great job at this. And I think if you can get that right, then that's something that you can win. And it requires hard work. As you said, it's intentionality, right? And that's why the platform is great, because if you use the platform, it takes care of all the details, allows you to focus on what you really need to focus on, which is being explicit, communicating frequently and well, and creating a personal connection, I think. Does sum up sound okay so far?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. It's that human element. I think having respect for each other's time, and just communication. I think Lisa and I always talk about the communication. Like imagine you going in to buy a car and you go into like this very nice dealership, and then the salesperson never calls you back, but you had the money. You had the money to buy it, but no one's interested. Like they're like, yeah, great. We know you want to buy it, but okay, we'll call you, and you never hear back from them. So I think that's how it is, and it works both ways, right? So communication.
Car dealerships in the Netherlands are like that. They don't really call you back for anything. But, anyway, so we've got a cool question here. Maybe let's put this one up and ask, because I think it's a good question. I'm not actually sure whether we have any resources available. I might have a quick look while you're answering it. But the question is, what questions can one ask during screening candidates before inviting them to an interview? Because this is a really interesting zone, right? You haven't created that connection yet. It's async. The person's receiving it. They don't really know. They're not going to invest the time. You're faceless. Like, how much can you ask here? What are the good questions? What are the questions that really matter and are worth taking the person's time versus which are the most superfluous where you're getting into like right nonsense?
I would rather say, like, if you get the candidate's details, because once you send a message, obviously in your message you're tailoring it, you're kind of giving them a bit of information, and then once they accept that message, I think you do get their cell phone number and the email address, so you can immediately get on the phone to just screen them. You're probably gonna have to open the call with who you are, like, hey, remember me? This is where I'm calling from. You really want to sell your company and your brand, and then you want to sell the position, and then you're going to probably ask, like, what do you think? Like, what are you looking for? What kind of opportunities do you want? And I think that's once you uncover that fit in that call, like, this is what we're selling and this is what the candidate's looking for, then you could potentially bring them into the interview. Because when you just have that call, candidates will tell you, like, I only want to work remote, or I actually live quite far away from where your company is, so I can't actually do the hybrid. So you want to just unpack a little bit in the call about who you are and get a little bit more about the candidate and understand what they're really looking for.
Yeah, so it's not, you're not asking them like substantive questions of like, a trick question or, some maths question
No.
or anything in that early stage. You want to move the evaluation to a later stage. You just want to check, is this going to work? Broad strokes, is it square peg round hole type screening? Is that what
Yeah.
that is?
Yeah, I think try to avoid sending those questions on a message like, what are you looking for? What is your notice period? What is your current cost of company? Because that becomes like very, like, it's not very personal. So it's almost like, just tell me this information, I'll tell you whether or not I want to move ahead with you. You want to actually just create the connection from the beginning. Because I find that companies that do that don't actually get good feedback from candidates. So don't send those kind of messages before you get on a call with them.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout of creating that personal. So basically, by asking them what they're looking for, you show immediately that you treat people like people and that you actually care about the person and about creating fit, as opposed to making sure that they meet your requirements, so that it's bi-directional. I think that's a really good piece of advice. Lise?
It also gives the candidate space to ask any questions that they might have. Yeah, like Nick C said, with regards to, for example, the work model, how many days, hybrid can mean many different things to different people. So how many days would I have to be in the office, et cetera, and then you can assess from the very get-go whether or not it's going to be a good fit.
Yeah, that hybrid one is a real thing. We still haven't. We're a platform that processes like thousands of candidates every month, and it's still hard to figure out what people mean when they click the buttons, and clarifying what that means. Again, and that it's been flux in the market. Henri, I'm wary that we talked to you a lot at the beginning when we were talking about matching products, because our product is focused on the matching. Once we started talking about creating these comms and optimizing for fit, we haven't heard from you. Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I guess a little bit. As you rightly say, the platform is very good at like the initial setup, right? It's getting you the baseline to get going, and then you've got this human process to really take people through the funnel and get them placed. What it kind of points to is that the information that you put on the platform as a candidate, if you're building a profile, that has to be accurate. And similarly, if you're creating a position, if you're putting a job spec there, the more accurate that is, the better chance you have of the upfront engagement, the screening kind of stuff already being kind of sorted, because the candidate can already see what your model is, where the location is, what skills you're looking for, etc. So the point that I'm making is that to put the upfront information as accurately as possible. Don't say that you want someone to have all 10 of these skills. They need to have all 10. Well, actually, you don't. Actually, you're only looking for someone with .NET, and you're happy if they also have good communication skills and this skill and that skill and that skill. So it's like being really clear on upfront on which things are really important to you, make it really accurate, because candidates see that, and that means that you can already make that kind of screening fit thing happen before you even start interviewing. So the better information you have up front is better. Yeah, and the platform allows you to do that really well. So yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, that's actually really good. I'm going to drop a Calendly link. Speaking of Calendly links, that's a Calendly link with me to tell us how we can improve the product and service. Because ultimately we're a hybrid product service, right? Like you can see Henri and the team, and the marketing team spend an enormous amount of time and energy getting the right candidates to the platform, making the ability for you to find them. And then once you get going and start creating those connections, obviously Lisa and the team are making sure those candidates' profiles are good, that they've been checked, that they're ready, that their intent is there, and the same thing on the company side. And then it turns into a bit of a service. So we do this to help you find the right fit. And if you've been using OfferZen, whether it's the product side of things or it's the service side of things, and you've got some ideas on how we can help make it better, I'd love to hear from you. So please book some time with me. That would be super useful. That's kind of one of the main reasons we do these, is to create it's not really a dual direction dialogue in this webinar format, but we want to give you some ideas of like how we think about it and hear some of a response from you. So would love to speak to you. I see Floris is typing, so we might have room for one question. There we go. We have a request, which is nice to have a calendar for hiring manager like devs, so that we can book time. Henri, product request for you. I think one of the things that we've been looking at here is it would be great, but one of the things that at least my core thesis here strategically is that, as I mentioned, people kind of want to do their own thing, want to use their own calendars, want to do this stuff. So making that initial connection, giving you the contact details and saying like, hey, let's go. The calendar one, 100%, it seems like the one thing that is really in that realm that would really help. It's just to create that initial connection, because even if you give your contact details and you still have that, as you say, the back and forth versus just going, cool, 2 calendars connected, battleships, pick one, and we've got a meeting. Cool. So thanks for that feedback for us. And just a reminder that you can book a call with us. It would be super, super appreciated, and we can learn a lot from you. So I just want to say thanks to our guests. Thank you, everybody, Lisa, Nicola, and Henri, for joining. We appreciate you taking the time and sharing your summation of your knowledge of dealing with all these hundreds of companies and candidates and lines of code, Henri. So thank you very much. And thank you very much to everybody who's joined. We appreciate you taking the time, the lunchtime. And we run a bunch of these events, meetups, those kinds of things, as I mentioned earlier. So keep a lookout, and we value your feedback and your participation. So thanks very much for joining, and have a good afternoon.
Thanks,
Ciao.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.